Matt Kordelski, if you could go back in time to about a year ago and murder COVID-19 patient zero and prevent the pandemic, would you do it? Okay, Matt, thank you for this COVID version of the trolley problem, or Hitler problem, I suppose, the Hitler assassination question, right? If you could always go back and assassinate Hitler, would you do it? And for this question, this is something I've actually given a bit of thought to. You asked me this a week ago. I wanted to sit on it for a little bit, because it's obviously a moral question, on the same line as the trolley problem or something like that. My simple answer to this question is no, I would not. And the reason why is because, well, there are many layers to the reasons why I would not murder somebody to prevent a pandemic. One, things like equation-like thinking or algorithmic thinking of moral principles is fraught with disaster for a number of reasons. One of them being that context always matters. Always matters when it comes to questions of morality or ethics. There's no escaping it. There is no, formula you're going to apply that's going to be universally applicable in every case. Even the phrase "be good" or "be kind," I mean, these are relative terms, and they have everything to do with the viewpoint of the person who believes they are being kind versus the person who is at the receiving end of that. Maybe their interpretation of what's happening is that this is not kindness at all. So it's not, so your intent is not the only thing that matters when it comes to questions of moral principles or ethical quandaries, right? First off, you put in the question correctly so, murder the COVID-19 patient zero. Well, that means that I have to now make the trolley problem like math, or the utilitarian ethics math equation of, well, here's one life and here's 200,000 lives, and I'm going to be the one to decide that it's the morally sound thing to do to kill this innocent person so that 200,000 other people might live. Now that sounds like it makes a lot of sense. I mean, numbers-wise, if you assume that every single human life is the same value as every other single human life, then that equation makes sense. But let's be real. Except on paper, when it comes to considerations of how the law should be applied or human rights should be applied to people, the fact of the matter is, in the real world, people are not equal, not even remotely equal. We are all radically different from one another, and we bring different value to different situations. I am useless in a shipwreck. I bring no value whatsoever. But I am sure there are many emergency personnel, sailors, these kind of people who have all kinds of value to bring to those situations. So I'm useless there. So maybe I'm surplus population in that situation. If you need somebody to do occult intervention, I'm great, right? So if you want somebody to talk about critical thinking, I'm okay. I bring value, in other words, to those scenarios. So how do you externally, not paying attention to any of this stuff, judge the value of my life versus the value of nameless, faceless others, right? How can we do that? At the end of the day, this is why these kind of, I guess, philosophy or ethics 101 type debate questions, or these, sort of moral quandaries that are presented, we have to understand that these are not useless exercises, but they are academic exercises. And in the real world, you've got way more factors at play than math when it comes to determining the relative value of any human life. And this is why judging this kind of thing is just, really for the birds. Because here's the other problem with judging the value of a life is, until that person has lived their life, how do you possibly know what they were or weren't capable of and what their potentials were, good or bad? And how do you judge that with any degree of certainty? You can't. You only have conjecture as to what you think this person's value is or isn't. And that creates a lot of problems, right? Because we try to categorize things into simpler, easier to think about ways. And this is where all these algorithmic ethical quandaries come from. And I said, they're not useless. They're interesting philosophical exercises, and they certainly can help clarify and bring some clarity to moral problems. But they are not everything in and of themselves. And I only bring all this stuff up because I went, diving into some of this in order to kind of give this question some real serious consideration, and also try to explain why my answer to the question is no, I would not go murder somebody, because I don't know who that person is or what value they bring or will bring to the world at large. What if patient zero of COVID-19 was a baby? I mean, we could start throwing so many questions at this that will make this an extremely difficult question to answer. If you just run the pure math of it off the basis that, every life equals every other life, then sure, obviously go murder this person. But I'm not doing that math that way, because if you're really asking me this question, then it's not some academic ivory tower exercise. It's a real world question of, would I go kill this person in order to, potentially save all these lives? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that, because I just don't think I don't think murder in that sense is justified. And I don't think we're in a position to be able to judge the relative value of one person versus another in the overall scheme of things. Not when it comes to life and death. I'll judge people's values all day long when it comes to their politics, their religion, their favorite books, their favorite movies. I mean, we can have talks about that are not life and death matters. But when it comes to actual life, when you take a life, that's it. It's gone. It's never coming back. And that person will never be repeated in history. And maybe they've done horrible things, and they shouldn't necessarily be around other people because the value they bring is negative. Serial killers, these kind of people, psychopaths. But I still don't advocate for their murder. I still don't think killing them is the solution to that problem, right? Segregation, isolation, rehabilitation. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do for people. So this is why I'm not a proponent for the death penalty. I just don't think it's the right thing to do. Viscerally, emotionally, I will get as riled up as anybody else in the moment. And I am just as capable of mob mentality as anybody else. So in an emotional moment, you might catch me going, yeah, kill that guy, right? Absolutely. A TV shows, my wife hears it all the time. But in the real world, okay, hang on, air brakes, right? Let's not be too hasty about this. And maybe I'm going on at a mad rate about this, and this is much more than you needed to know, but this is some of the reasoning behind my thinking on that answer to that question. It's a good question. I wanted to give it at least a serious answer. And I hope that what I've said here might be food for thought, if nothing else.